Hello everybody, Jennifer Maker here. It's a beautiful day to make plushies. My daughter Alexa and I have made many plushies together over the years. She made this one all on her own. I think plushies are a great beginner sewing project. The pieces aren't hard to assemble and you get an adorable, huggable friend when you're all done. So let's head on over to the craft table and we'll get started. Today's project is inspired by my love of kawaii, which means cute in Japanese. The modern version of kawaii is a popular aesthetic and very adorable. One well-known example is Totoro, which I happened to catch in the theater in Japan when it debuted while I was living there in the 80s. This is an original Totoro from the year it came out that I bought when I was there. And while we're not making Totoro today, we are making something super cute, these adorable cats and dogs. So you can mix and match the elements or change them to suit the animal that you want to make. Different color fabric and ear shapes can make them totally different. It's all up to you. Now I used fleece and minky for the bodies and a simple felt for the eyes. We stuck to natural colors, but there are so many fun fabrics to choose from. You can make a dog featuring your favorite colors or a galaxy cat with some of the fun minky options that are available. But you might wonder, what's the difference between fleece and minky? And that is a great question. So fleece is a knit polyester fabric that has been agitated on both sides to get the soft, fluffy feel that we all love. One side is often fluffier and brighter, so that's considered the right side, but you can use whichever you prefer. And even though you can't see the knit stitches at the core, that still means it stretches more in one direction than the other. That's important for this project, so remember that when we go to prepare it, and I will remind you, don't worry. I strongly suggest you use fleece labeled anti-pill if the plushie will get handled at all. That means it's much less likely to form those little balls of loose fibers that you sometimes see on older fleece jackets. Those are not cute. Now, minky is a brand name and much thinner and almost always one-sided. It does have some stretch, but often not as much as fleece. The smooth, soft texture makes it super popular for touchable projects like these, but it can be slippery during sewing. We will use lots of pins. And you probably know already all about felt, but just in case you don't, it's a dense fabric with little to no stretch. That makes it perfect for details like the eyes and nose on our plushies. All the fabric can be cut by hand, of course, but you can also cut them on a cutting machine, which I will demonstrate for you today. I'm always impressed by some of the shapes that we can make on a machine, like the felt eyes with a hole for the highlight and these adorable eyelashes. It's amazing. That would be very hard to cut out smoothly by hand, and getting an identical set would be nearly impossible. It's not a problem with the cutting machine, however. So I'll show you how to prepare the designs in Cricut Design Space, so a Cricut Maker or a Maker 3 can cut the pieces, and they can even add a seam allowance line for you all at once. It's super easy using a pink fabric grip mat, washable fabric marker like this, and the rotary blade. You do need to secure the fabric in a specific way on the mat for maximum cuteness, so I'll show you how to do that too. Fabric scissors or a handheld rotary cutter with a ruler and a self-healing mat will help you when you cut the fabric to fit your mat too. And like any sewing project, there will be some extra fluff, so a lint roller helps keep things clean. Now the rotary blade is really important for this project. It pushes down with consistent pressure and the round blade glides over the cut lines. A normal cutting blade doesn't use the same motion, so it can snag on fabric, but the rotary blade is like magic. And you can use a few extra steps to cut fabric on a Cricut Explore cutting machine too, which I've detailed for you over at jennifermaker.com/cutfabricwithcricut. It does involve bonding some material to the back, so keep that in mind because you don't want to just put your material right on the mat. Another option would be to use your Cricut to draw a consistent pattern on your unbonded fabric and then just cut them out carefully by hand. I used a simple sewing machine to assemble most of my pieces. I'll go over a few simple fabric shapes with you for even more cuteness. Lots of pins, by the way, are going to be your friend in this tutorial. And then I'll show you how to hand sew or hot glue the features on. And a pencil will come in handy a few times too. Now, an important note on safety. Since these plushies have sewn and glued pieces, they're not meant for young children. They'll see your cute accessories like your scarf or your eyes and rip them right off. If you want to make a plushie for a young child, please look for tutorials for children's toys. They'll use more secure processes like safety eyes and different sewing techniques. Same thing with pets. These are not animal-friendly plushies. These plushies are meant to keep you company and look cute. They're not up for roughhousing. All right, so now let's learn how to sew some super cute plushies together. Step 1, get my free plushie pattern. You can cut the plushies by hand using the printable pattern that I've made for you, but digital design files make cutting them with a Cricut or another cutting machine super easy. To get either the pattern or the digital file free, go to jennifermaker.com/451 and look for libraries in the red bar at the top. Then either click Get a Password if you don't yet have one, or click Enter the library. You can find the designs on the page by searching for number 451 and then click it to download the zip file. Inside the file, you'll see a SVG folder that has files for a cat, a dog, and an optional scarf. Let me show you how to prepare and cut this on a Cricut cutting machine. First, upload the SVG file or files of your choice to Cricut Design Space and add them to your canvas. The dog is very similar, so I'll show you the differences between the cat and the dog at the end. If you're not sure how to upload files, go to jennifermaker.com/svgs to learn how to unzip and upload files. Step 2, prepare your plushie design. Here's how the cat and scarf files look on my canvas in Cricut Design Space. You can zoom out to see all of the designs by clicking on the minus sign on the lower left. If you're making the scarf, those are the two fringed rectangles. Just pull them off to the side while we adjust the cat. There are two large body pieces, which will make the front and back of the plushie. The two rectangles will become the tail, and the two sets of curved shapes are the ears, with the lighter color for the front. I've also added lines for the seam allowance, which will have the Cricut draw during the cutting process. To make sure they are drawn in the right place rather than cut, we need to change their operation and then attach them to the correct basic cut layers. So to do this, select the design and then click the ungroup icon. I'm going to spread out each layer so they're easier to tell apart. Starting at the top of the Layers panel list, click the first layer without a color. Then click the drop-down menu under Operation and select Pen to tell the Cricut to draw instead of cut the line. Now use the color selection box to set the line to a marker and select Blue Washable Fabric. Click the line of words above the marker layer to select both the seam allowance and the shape. Use Attach to keep them together during cutting. And then just repeat for the rest of the paired layers. Newly attached layers will jump to the top of the panel. Just scroll down until you see another pair that needs work. On the body pieces, the seam allowance looks different. It goes all the way around so you can choose where to leave a turning gap later. There's also a center registration marker and lines for folds. I'll show you how to use them later. The scarf is simple, so you don't have to do anything to prepare it. I'm going to leave mine the light color that it already is. And you're ready to cut. Save your work and we'll move on to the fabric. Step 3, prepare your fabric. Make sure you have the right machine selected and click Make It. On the Prepare screen, make sure there aren't any unattached lines on a white mat. If there are, that means something isn't attached correctly. Just go back and try again. Leave the material size at 12 by 12 inches. Once you're satisfied with the mats, you can see how much fabric you'll need for each color. I'm using a 12 by 12 inch pink fabric grip machine mat, but a very sticky green standard grip mat will also work. If you're making a version like me, you're going to need one large square in the lighter colored minky or fleece fabric, two large squares in the darker color minky or fleece fabric, and a 3 by 3 inch square of both white and black felt. Here's how I prepared my first mat with a handheld rotary cutter on a self-healing mat. Fabric scissors will work also. If the fabric has a selvage, which is the white or otherwise different area along a top or bottom edge of the fabric, trim that for a foot or so to get a nice straight line. Now hold your fabric face down and check which direction it stretches more. The side that stretches more will go horizontally on the machine mat, so put the fabric down the right way. Place the cut selvage edge along a mat line so you know one edge will start straight. Then use the lines on your mat and an appropriate ruler to cut the other sides of a square just under 12 inches tall and wide. Now grab your machine mat and place the fabric's top edge just within the top line. Make sure the stretch is still side to side. Then slowly smooth the rest of the fabric into place. Smooth out wrinkles without stretching the material. If any edges are beyond the white lines, trim them along with extra fluff to keep your machine fluff free. Then use a brayer to stick it down really well. On the screen, drag any pieces right at the edges in a bit. Just don't rotate anything. Make sure there's space between them and the red line, which is the maximum cutting area. This also helps even out the wear on your machine mat. Here's how I laid out my other mats too. Moving small pieces like the eyes and the nose to the center makes them much less prone to cutting issues. And when you're all finished, select the first mat and then click Continue. Step 4, cut your material. On the Make screen, check that the first mat is still the one that you have prepared. I got the best results for fleece, minky, and felt using the burlap material setting with default pressure. So put your fabric marker in clamp A and put the cap on the top so you don't lose it, and put your rotary blade in clamp B. Load your first machine mat into your Cricut and press the flashing button to begin. When the drawing is done, don't unload your mat, as your Cricut will now cut the fabric, which is so cool. When it's all done, unload the machine mat. Remove the excess fabric and then gently lift the plushie pieces from the top edges. Be careful not to stretch them. And then place them to the side just as they are. The white felt for my eyes is next. Mine doesn't have a front, but place it on the machine mat so it covers the design on the screen. Brayer down again and then just keep on cutting. And repeat the steps for the rest of the mats. Step 5, assemble the plushie. Place the body pieces right sides together with the edges aligned. A few pins in the center registration mark keep the pieces lined up. The vertical lines at the top and bottom are folds, which create a slight 3D shape when sewing. To prepare them, hold the body layers in both hands with your fingers about an inch from either side of one drawn line. Move your hands together so your fingertips meet and the fabric layers curve up and down away from each other, like a fishy face. Make sure the drawn lines stay aligned at the bends so everything remains even. Without letting the pinches go, fold the top curved fabric to the left and the bottom to the right. Use pins to secure the folds. There will be 4 layers of fabric on either side of the line now. Squish the folds with your fingers at the seam line to make them less bulky and easier to sew over. Repeat for the other fold line. Pin or clip around the edge. I'll close the body at the bottom side by hand, so I'll leave about 2 inches between 2 pins there as a reminder for me. And now we're ready to sew the body. Make sure your thread is a good quality neutral color on your bobbin and spool, and be sure to use a fresh needle for the best results. I used a 3 to 4 millimeter straight stitch, but the best choice may be different for your machine. Raise your presser foot and place the fabric underneath, facing the direction in which you want to sew. I'm starting with the body at the left side of the gap. You can sew from either side using the seam line. Position the line on your fabric under your needle and then lower the presser foot in place. Sew a few reverse stitches to lock in the beginning and then sew forward along the line. Curves are a little tough, so take your time. When you get close to a pin or a clip, be sure to remove it rather than sew over it. Sewing over it is a fast way to break a needle or even jam your sewing machine. Be sure to slow down at the folds because sewing more layers means more work for the machine. And then just keep sewing until you reach the end of the gap. Add a few reverse stitches to lock the end and you are good. Lift your presser foot and needle and then cut your thread. We'll stuff this piece now. You could notch the seam allowance, but trimming it worked well in testing to make the seams less bulky and more round. Reach through the opening to pull some of the inner fabric out to invert the shape. Poke your finger or a blunt long tool like a pencil's eraser end in through the opening and run it along the seam to smooth it from the inside. Tear off small pieces of polyfill and stuff your cute plushy body. The flexibility of the fabric allows it to stretch from side to side. The plushie body should be full, but you don't want it so full that there's polyfill escaping out the hole. I used a ladder or invisible stitch to hand sew the gap closed. To do this, just thread your needle with about 18 inches of thread, then tie a few knots at the end so it's doubled. At one side of the gap, hide the knot by poking the needle from the inside out a few stitches back. Put the needle back through from the front to create a stitch about 1/4 of an inch long, the same distance from the raw edge. Directly across the gap, push the needle from the inside out. Take another 1/4 inch stitch before moving back across the gap. Your stitches and thread across should be perpendicular, like a ladder. After a few stitches on either side, gently pull the thread to close the gap. Keep sewing until you overlap the machine stitches at the end. Close it up and then tie it off and trim the thread. Now pin your aligned ear pieces wrong sides together and sew along the seam line. For the cat ears, the bottom is already open, so you don't need to leave a gap for turning. Now just trim the seam allowances and then invert the ears. Add a little stuffing if you'd like. Now pick a front for the body and place it facing you. Slightly fold an ear into a V shape with the lighter fabric face forward. Then experiment with ear placement. Cats have their ears pricked up sideways and higher on their bodies than dogs do. When you find the right spot, fold in the raw edges and hold it in place with a few pins. Place the second ear so it's even with the other one. Now remove the pins from the back, but keep the front pinned so it's stable. Thread your needle for another ladder stitch, starting inside the ear to hide the knot. Start stitching the back layer to the top of the head. The back line will curve if you hold the V shape. At the front of the ear, keep the fabric slightly folded inward so it looks cupped. When it's secure, tie off the thread and trim it, and then repeat for the other side. You can pin and sew the tail just like the other pieces. You can sew along the seam allowance line for a rectangular tail, or draw your own style with the washable marker to make a shorter or tapered tail. It's entirely up to you. Invert and lightly stuff the tail if you'd like, then use a ladder stitch to attach it to the body just like the ears. Plan your eye and nose placements with the fabric marker. The eyelashes should go in opposite directions to create both a right and left eye. The nose is usually in the center, but you can experiment, of course. If you want to add a mouth, draw it on too. I made mine a classic cartoon mouth. Then, hot glue the white circles to the back of the eye pieces, holding them with a pencil to set. Trim any white edges visible from the front. Then glue them to the face. The nose will go on last. For the mouth, thread some embroidery floss on an embroidery needle and knot the ends. We'll use a back stitch for this. Insert the needle where the nose will go, and then poke it back out at a corner of the mouth. I'm right-handed, so I'll start at the right. Take a short stitch, then use a scooping motion to run the thread with the same distance under the fabric and back out on the line. Poke the needle back in where the first stitch ended and scoop to come out beyond where your floss emerges from the face. Use this method to follow the mouth line too. You can adjust the distances to use shorter stitches as needed on the curves. When you're all done, poke the needle back in to finish the final stitch, and then bring it back out by the knot in the nose area. Tie off and trim both ends. Then hot glue the nose in place to hide the knots. If you cut the scarf, place the pieces right side together and pin just the short, smooth edge. Run a stitch a 1/4 inch in from the edge, making sure to lock the stitches at the start and finish. Trim the threads, and it's done. You can play with the scarf, but I placed the seam facing the back of the plushie and sewed it in with a few hand stitches. Wrap the edges around to keep the kitty warm. Now use a lint roller to clean up, and you are all finished. Isn't this adorable? How about a dog? As I said, the dog only has a few differences. When it's time to sew the ears, line up and pin the shapes right sides together, then play with placement on the body to see where you want to connect them. You can get totally different looks by securing just a small area or a long curved section. Since the ears are small, trim the seam allowance very well before inverting and adding some optional polyfill. Really floppy ears don't need any polyfill at all. And then hand sew the ears in place. If you have a big connection area, the ladder stitch works well. For a small spot, you could try poking in the raw edges and using just a few lines of backstitch in the ear color. Also, dogs' noses are different than cats. They're slightly larger than the cat noses are. So play with the placement to get the look you want. Aren't these just the cutest? I love how fast they come together too. So yes, you can cut minky and fleece on a Cricut Maker or Maker 3. The rotary blade is the key, along with the fabric preparation to make sure your fabric pieces stretch in the right way. I had the most consistent results with anti-pill or polar fleece, but minky is really very nice for the insides of the ears and does work well with the fleece. Colors that the blue washable marker will show on are the easiest, but what if you want to make a plushie using those fun faux furs that you've seen? Well, they have longer fibers that could get caught in your cutting machine, and that would not be cute, so I don't recommend faux fur. Now you could cut the plushie pieces on heavy cardstock on your cutting machine to transfer the designs to the back of the furry fabric to then be cut up by hand if you want to give it a shot. Reusable templates are really helpful for projects that you'll make several times. That way you can update them and keep the projects consistent. I highly recommend patterns. If any of the fabric marker shows after you've put together your plushie, you can just use a rag to gently blot the surface with cold water and mild detergent and then let it dry. The marker magically disappears. I think these plushies will make great gifts for anyone who loves cute decor and little squishy friends. With some experimentation, you can customize them to match your pet's breed, a favorite animal, or any combination you want. You can even sew little accessories like hats to go with the little scarf that's in the file. I'd love to see what you come up with. Now, if you have any questions at all about how to make a really cute plushie with a Cricut or just, sewing it and cutting it by hand that I didn't answer here, or anything else that you think I can help you with, please let me know. Leave your question below this video or ask over in our Cricut Crafters group at jennifermaker.com/CricutCrafters. I hope you'll make these cute little friends and share your photos with me. And that's it for today. Until tomorrow, this is Jennifer Maker reminding you to craft a life you love.